Hi guys, it's Michael here from Team Forever Forward. We're going to come at you with a little bit of a different video today. We're going to be kind of like talking through some programming elements. I've got my little setup over here. We're going to have a little run through. I'm going to have the camera rolling on the little bits of paper so you can see what I'm kind of talking through. Let me know whether you like this kind of stuff or whether it's a load of crap. So just let us know. As always, after the video is done, like, subscribe, comment down below, join the team. Hope you enjoy this kind of stuff. Okay guys, right, so let's get into the video then. So, like I said, we're going to be talking through some programming principles, alright? So, straight off the bat, it's important to note that this is just going to be principles that we can apply across a variety of different programs, dependent on the person and the goal, which we'll get into in a minute, okay? So, it isn't going to be necessarily today me kind of like saying about a specific sport or a specific like kind of event to program for, because I think it'd be wrong for me to do that. It's more handy to understand the principles, and although that can kind of be like frustrating, and I definitely found like when I was learning that it's a frustrating kind of thing, like, dude, like just tell us the answers. But honestly, when you wrap your head around the fact that these are principles to apply to all your programming, it'll make a lot more sense and you'll be able to do a lot more with it, okay? So, we're going to go through some principles, alright? But before we start, we need to look at a few different factors, okay? So, the way I've drawn this out is these lovely interlinking circles here. The worst circles ever drawn, but we're going to go with it, okay? So, the top one we've got who, then we've got what and how, okay? So these are things that you have to bear in mind when you're doing a program. Alright, so straight off the bat, who? Who are we working with, alright? If you don't know who you're working with, you've got to know who you're dealing with, okay? Whether this is a client or for yourself, you've got to know who they are, okay? What job do they do? How stressed are they? What's their age? What's their training experience? And not only like training age, but like years of training effectively. Okay, because that's a big difference, because you'll have guys at the gym that have been training for a number of years, even maybe like 5 years, but honestly, like the years that they've been training effectively is probably down like even 0, alright? So we've got to look at who we're dealing with and then what. So this is going to be the goals, alright? So a big one as well. So what do they actually want? Without this is pointless, okay? We need to establish what they want. What's the time frame? Are they competing? You've got to know what the goal is before you do the program, okay? And then the last one is how are we going to get there? And this is the one we're going to be focusing on going through some of these principles, all right? But just to highlight some things, if you have who and what, you consider those things, but you don't actually think about how to get there, you'll never reach the goal. And I think that's where a lot of people are. They know what they want, and obviously they know who they are, but they just don't know how to get there. And if you're a trainer, and if you're doing someone's program for them, this is what you've got to bring into the equation. If you are doing what, so if you know what the goal is, so for example max strength, and you know how to get there, but you're not taking into consideration who you're working for, then it has no relevance. So if you're considering like frequency and stuff like that, but that person doesn't have that available time, then it's pointless, alright? You've got to consider that as well. And then over here, if you just consider who and how, you can't really do it because you need to know the goal in order to how to get there, okay? And right in the middle, where we consider all three things, that's where the best program's going to be, okay? So completely individual to the person, all right? So before we get into the specifics of the how, we need to look at this one thing, okay? And this is the SAID principle, so specific adaptations to impose demands, that we've got down here. Now I'm going to go through it, and it seems like really simple, but it will kind of help you understand that, alright? All it means is we are going to put a specific kind of demand on the body to get a specific adaptation. So we get an adaptation in response to the demand, okay? Nice and simple, alright? But it's something that goes amiss a lot of the time, alright? If you're wanting to get stronger, you need to put the body in a position, alright, and demand the body to get stronger to get that adaptation, alright? This is a very, very important thing, alright? And a lot of people will kind of be like, what's the point? And they don't actually really think about it. I mean, like, if you don't consider this, it's ridiculous. This is how we get to point A to point B. Alright? We need to know how to get there so we're not just wandering off doing all sorts of crap that's not getting us anywhere. Alright? So although these things that I'm going to be talking about are general, understand the reason that they are general is because your specific goal and your specific things are going to be different from each person. So it'd be impossible for me to do that, okay? So, let's look at some variables, alright? We're going to be focusing on intensity, volume and frequency because I think they're the easiest ones to kind of put in a concept. But we've got a whole number of things that we can change around when we are programming, really. So we've got frequency, intensity, reps, sets, volume, exercises, load type, contraction type, order of exercises, tempo, RPE, and RIR, which is just repetitions and reserve. We've got all these things we can kind of manipulate, but a lot of them are kind of tying in between each. So they're not necessarily just strict factors. So obviously reps and sets are going to influence the volume, frequency will influence the volume, number of exercises will kind of have a factor there. How many reps could determine the intensity as well as the other way around. There's tons of different things. The load type will impact that. Contraction type will impact intensity. So they're all very much intertwined. But we're going to look at these three factors just by themselves firstly to kind of get the concepts of each of these to hopefully help you guys out with the programming, alright? So, first one. Intensity, okay? Why do we care about what weight is on the bar? Nice and simple, it pretty much is determining what you are putting your body through. So it's determining that demand, which is going to determine that adaptation, which is the response to that demand, okay? Now, when we say intensity, we're essentially talking about how hard we're working. For different sports and different events, it could be measured on different scales. What we're going to do is just look at it in terms of percentage 1RM, just because I think this is going to be more based around that for the guys that are watching this, okay? But it could be percentages of other factors, percentage max heart rate, percentage VO2 max, and a number of other different things, okay? So it could be a bunch of different things, but we're going to do it percentage 1 rep max. So, let's say that we have someone wants to work on their strength. So let's say max strength, all right? Now let me just quickly chuck some other numbers down here so you guys can see the numbers I'm working off of. Now, I know that the 50% mark isn't actually halfway, but to be honest, we don't really spend too much time down there anyway, so it's easier to have it up here, okay? So, max strength then, all right? We're looking at this top end portion of the percentage 1 rep max. So we want to be working in there, okay? So we know that's where we get the max strength adaptations. So why on earth would we be getting our client or yourself to be training down here? Okay, now yes, you may be doing some other different things to work around to improve your performance, but let's just keep this as a concept. You need to be training in the intensities that give you the adaptation you want, okay? So let's say that someone wants hypertrophy, okay? So for this one, let's just say it's above 60% 1 rep max. Obviously, I know you can achieve hypertrophies at other range, but practically speaking, this is where you want to be. Again, we want to make sure that the program is spending the majority of the time in here. Okay, plain and simple. You need to be working at the intensity for the adaptation you want. Alright? The other little side note to bear in mind as well is perceived versus actual intensity. Now, that's something I touched on in the other recovery video, but what this means is you'll get people who train so much and try and get so much done, and they've just accumulated so much fatigue, but they go into the gym and they say they are still training at 100% or like feeling like they are smashing it, where in actual fact they may not be. So if we have a look at this, and let's say that someone comes into the gym, right, and they think that they're working in this range here. They're like, oh yeah, I'm training definitely this weight's definitely about 80 to 90% of my 1 rep max. So you're thinking perfect, they're spotting in there. Alright, just by what they're perceiving. However, when you actually look at the numbers compared to what they could be doing if they were recovered and if they didn't have that fatigue, they're actually down here. And now the issue with that is if we look, when we bring it down, we're not in that max strength. So if their goal is at max strength, we've got an issue. Alright, we're not training in that zone that we need it to be. Okay? And this stuff is in relation to where they could be if they were recovered properly. Alright? But instead they're built up a ton of fatigue, they're not recovered properly. They feel like they're working hard because the weights are feeling heavy, but they're actually down here rather than being where they want to be. Okay, so I hope that makes sense in terms of intensity. So let's move on then. So let's look at volume then. Alright, a big little buzzword in terms of in the fitness community. People love some volume, alright? So essentially volume is going to determine the magnitude of adaptation, so how much you're going to get of it, okay? Pretty plain and simple, that one. By doing something more, you get more from it. The body is put under that stress more, so it's wanting to respond and get better at it, okay? So if we look at the graph that we got here, and along the bottom we've got volume, and as I draw the line across, it's going to be increasing volume. So towards this end, it's a lot higher volume than it is down here. And then we got gains up the side, alright? It has to have a Z on the end, otherwise it is not gains and you're not getting anywhere. And again, the higher up I go here, the better gains I'm getting, okay? So essentially the relationship will end up looking something similar to this, where as we increase volume by going along, the gains get better to a point, and then any more, we start bringing it back down the other side. And you can see how we've got this inverted U, alright, which just means as I'm going up in the volume, I'm getting more from it, okay? So as the volume increases, so if I bring it over here, it's going to be more gains on the side there, okay? Now the important thing to note for volume, I think, before we discuss it even further, is the fact that this is productive volume, okay? I like to think of actual volume or labeling it productive or quality volume or something like that, okay? Stuff that's actually getting you towards your goal. That's why I like productive volume. Because a lot of people would train, but their training isn't really in any zone that's actually getting any results for them. It's just building fatigue without anything else. So that's the kind of volume we want to avoid. We need to be making sure that all the volume we do is productive and it actually has a purpose. Okay, so you need to be able to answer why you're doing something. So now we've clarified that, let's have a look more into it, okay? So this is going to be very individual, alright? And also dependent on where they are, okay? So it's important to realise there is a point here where everything past it is going to start dropping in performance. That's important to know, and Mike Israetel always refers to this as MRV, the max recoverable volume. When we put our body under stress, we've got to make sure it can recover and adapt to that stress, alright? If it's too high, it doesn't have a chance to properly recover, and therefore we don't get the adaptation. Hence why the amount of gains starts dropping down, okay? So we need to be making sure that we're getting as much as we can, and this is person to person. So if we take someone that's new and they've relatively got like pretty limited gains, all right, even a slight increase in volume is going to result in more progress, okay? And for this person, that's great. If we take another person, let's say that their potential is up here, all right, and where they're currently at is here, they've got very limited room in terms of how far they've got left to progress. So they're actually going to have to be pushing their volume a lot higher than this guy to try and get any results. So when it comes to people copying other programs, this is why it's a silly mistake, because people are going to be at different limits. You're going to be able to do more volume, like other people will be able to do a ton of volume, you might not be. It all depends on training age and a bunch of other factors, okay? So you can't just take some random program that some bloke's doing and expect you to be able to do just as well off it, okay? It's very individual and you've got to find where that is. The other thing is this could be exercise specific as well as body part specific, okay? So it's subjective, that's important to know. I've calculated volume just on here as loads times reps times set. So increased volume load would just generally mean you're getting better adaptations. The important thing to know is the other variables would say the same. So obviously we want to be working the right intensity. But if we manage to increase the load while working with the same reps and sets, we'd get a good productive increase in the volume load there. Okay, and this has to be to the right zone as well, because we could be doing a ton of reps and sets and trying to rack up that volume, but the load isn't specific to that adaptation we want. Okay, so think of load as the intensity, and that's going to determine the adaptation. All right, perfect. So that's volume done. Now we need to look at frequency. Okay, how are we going to organize all of that volume? All right, so we've established that that volume is going to determine the magnitude of adaptation. But we need to know how to structure that out and plan it out, okay? So let's say this glass on the side is all the volume that you're planning to do, all right? Or this person can or should do, all right? And you've got the week ahead. You need to manage this out across the week where you're getting productive results, okay? So you could just give a little bit Monday, a little bit Wednesday, a little bit Friday, and a little bit Sunday, to spread it all out, and then you're all good. But what can happen is if you try and overdo it on one of those days, it overfills and you end up not being able to handle that properly for the next day. It has a knock-on effect if I'm training Tuesday, okay? So this whole organisation is just about you planning out the week or whatever way you're doing it and seeing how you can lay out all of the different exercises, reps and sets and all of those joyous things that make up the volume in order to get the right results, okay? The other thing to bear in mind is, let's say that I can't train Tuesday, I can't train Wednesday, I can't train Thursday, and I can't train Sunday. Now that limits you to these 3 days where you've now got to manage that volume across, okay? So it becomes trickier and trickier, but if these are the only days I can train, there's no point like telling me, oh, well, we've got to get a bit on Wednesday, because if I can't get in on Wednesday, I'm not doing that, okay? So you've got to be able to come up with ways to get around this, all right? But it's just a general concept that we need to organise that volume properly across, for example, this is just the microcycle, so the week, but across whatever scale you're using it for, okay? The other little one I just want to make a quick touch on is recovery. So what I just want to do for recovery is just touch on a few things. So the only things I really want to touch on in terms of recovery is just some brief things. I'll do another video in the future going more in depth in recovery. I feel like the other one we put up was missing some key bits, but the main thing is we need to think about the goal, so what we're actually wanting out of it, what intensity we need to work out, and then what rest time and recovery times we need to get that goal, okay? So what I mean by that is, let's say the goal is strength. We need to be thinking about what energy systems we're using for that and what rest time we'd need. And just a couple of quick examples, because I'm not going to spend long on it. If we are doing 5 sets of 5 reps at 85% with a lovely rest of 3 to 5 minutes, we're going to be getting different results than if we use the same reps and sets, but this time we're only resting 30 seconds. So one, that's going to be knocked on, which means that's going to have a knock on to that as well. So you need to be making sure that the rest time also measures up to what the goal is as well. So obviously the rest time and energy system things I think we should do in another video as well, tying it all in, because I think it's important to understand the fundamentals of what you're doing to then make better results. Okay, so that's a little bit on recovery. You just need to make sure you're getting the right the right rest time and recovery time to ensure that you're hitting the right intensity for your goal. Okay, so that's a little bit on recovery. So right, let's put it all together then. So number one, you've got to determine what the goal is and what intensity you need. Then you've got to decide how much of it you need to make progress without doing too much. Then you've got how to structure it properly, and then providing enough recovery to ensure that all of these things happen. Alright, so that's essentially all I want to do today, okay? Now, obviously, like I said, these are just some key principles, alright, and concepts. So, we'll do more detail on some other bits at another time, but cheers for watching the video. Make sure you like it, subscribe, share the video as well. Hashtag join the team. So join the team by old subscribing to the channel. You know the drill as before. But let us know in the comments whether that was helpful, whether I missed anything you'd like to touch on more. Like, more than happy to do these. And also just let us know whether you like this kind of setup. I thought it would be easier for me to have it on the paper and then talk through over the top, just so you can see more than on the whiteboard, which isn't the clearest, and I wanted you guys to see it, okay? So apologies for the scrappy drawings. That is not my strong suit, as you could probably have guessed. Did try and make it as good as possible, but yeah, let us know. Cheers for watching. So see you guys in the next one.